Hi guys, welcome to Hanging Out with Hamza. Today we have a special guest on. Her name is Stevie. She is a vet medicine doctor who has been with FIGS along with me, and that's how I met her. She's an incredible person who I've been friends with now for a very long time, and she was visiting Austin this weekend, and we just finished dinner, and I had to have her on my podcast. So, without further ado, Stevie will be on right after this intro. Hey y'all, this is Hamza, and I'm super happy we get to hang out for a little bit. Hey guys, welcome to the Hanging Out with Hamza. Again, here's Dr. Stevie. She is a vet medicine doctor who's currently doing travel vet meds, and she is loving it so far based on our conversation previously. And I really wanted to have her on here because she is just a beautiful human being who has been a really great friend for a long time. And I've just really appreciated her in my life. And I wanted to have her on here to share her wisdom and knowledge with y'all. And yeah, she's here just for the weekend, doing her travel vet medicine work, and she will dive deeper into that. So, without further ado, here is Stevie.
Well, thank you for having me. And the feeling is very mutual. I've loved getting to know you and have you in my life for the past few years, and you've always been very special to me. So it was a no-brainer. You asked me to come do this, and we had dinner, so it was a great night.
We went to Peacock, if, in case you're ever wondering, and you're in Austin. It's a great Mediterranean restaurant, which I love taking people to. And yeah, we kind of caught up on personal stuff, and I dove further into what she's currently doing, which is not something that you commonly see with a lot of vet medicine doctors. And I think it's a really cool, unique aspect of vet medicine that I think people should know more about. And yeah, I guess I'll start off with asking you about that. How did you kind of get into this, and like how have you liked it so far?
Yeah, so I am an emergency travel veterinarian, and I've been doing this now going into my third year. I started right out of vet school, as most people do, just in general practice, just thought that that was going to be my like long-term plan for years and years, um, just practice dogs and cats and go to work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and kind of do your thing. Very quickly out of school, realized that general practice is so much more than that, and came into COVID, got really burnt out, and made the transition to the emergency side of things during that time, along with a cross country move and lots of other life changes. And then the travel aspect came in after I had practiced for about a year in a small privately owned emergency hospital. That again, I was doing too much and stretching myself too thin, and the travel aspect came up, and it really just truly fell into my lap. The company that I work for was creating this team where they have hospitals all over the country, and they were looking to provide relief and support to the doctors that are stationary at those hospitals that were being overrun and overworked, and were exhausted and needed some support. And so this travel team was created, and now we have anywhere between 20 and 30 doctors that fly around the country, and fill in where we're needed. If people are out, if they're understaffed, sick, people are on maternity or paternity leave, we'll go in and fill in and work anywhere from 2 to 5 to 10 shifts in a row, and then fly back home. So a little different than the travel nursing that people are used to, but it's cool.
And how do you feel like it's helped with your kind of love for vet medicine? Do you feel like it's added a new kind of sense of enjoyment to it, or is it a whole different kind of feel for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think emergency in general, you're constantly seeing new things and exciting things, and you're figuring out those puzzle pieces and really getting a something different and unique every single day. I saw multiple things just this week that I've never seen before, which is always really fun and kind of ignites that passion of like why we got into this in the first place. And then the travel just keeps it fresh. Like I'm never in one place long enough to get tired of what I'm doing or bogged down with just the interpersonal drama. And, I get to like fly in and, it's fun and exciting. And then I leave.
It's like being an uncle with nephews and nieces.
Exactly.
To give it back.
Yes, exactly. And everyone's happy to see you and you're like smiling and it's like Dr. Stevie's here. And then I leave and then
It's awesome.
yeah, it's great.
You were telling me recently that you're going to be doing this overseas too, which I didn't realize with travel vet medicine because I did a little bit of the temp dentist thing, and I think most of healthcare it's done locally because of licensing and everything. So you're going to be able to do that overseas too. So can you further dive into that? Or?
Yeah. So right now, what I'm doing internationally is um, basically spreading the word just about emergency medicine and specifically the company that I work for in general, where I'm going on to university campuses, lecturing, teaching upcoming vet students about just what ER looks like, because we don't have a lot of exposure to it in school necessarily. It's not one of those services that everybody has to take, even like you don't have to go through an emergency rotation at a lot of schools. And so just giving them exposure, hands on learning opportunities, and then inviting them to do externships, internships, those kinds of things. So,
And then with I guess vet medicine, I wanted to kind of ask like the more uh, personal questions, which we talked about at dinner. Obviously, there is a crisis in vet medicine going on right now. So
mm,
outside of the beautiful things you're doing and the fun you're
yeah.
having with that, I know you did have a pretty stressful experience with it in the last couple of years
Mhm.
before all of this, and that kind of probably drove you to what you're doing now. So I wanted to see if you could elaborate on that and kind of tell the listeners what you told me about, the current rate of graduation vet students versus, the job demand and everything right now.
Yeah. So it's the vet community in general um, has been going through a crisis, is going through a crisis, is set to become critical in the next 5 years, which, if you ask anybody in the field, it feels very critical where we're at already. Basically, especially COVID exacerbated everything, I think, as it did many things. Um, but we are losing more doctors, nurses, technicians in the fields every single year than we're gaining. And obviously, speaking from the doctor experience, um, there are still, I believe there's still only 30 vet schools in the US. Each one ranges with class size between usually about 85 to 120. I think there's one or two that's more students than that, graduating one class every year. And as I think we're all familiar with, obviously the pet ownership and the pet care in general has really escalated in the past 3 to 5 years, where people are, we always like joke, oh, people are not having kids anymore. Their pets are their kids, and then the plants are the pets. But it really is true. Like pet ownership has boomed. And not only that, but now pet owners want to take care of their pets like they are family members. Whereas when I was growing up, we had outside dogs and they went to the vet maybe if they got sick, maybe not. And now that's just the expectation is that people not only want to provide ongoing vet care, but also like hire vet care specialists and emergency care and things that weren't always a factor in the past. And since we're losing so many in the profession and then not refilling and sustaining those numbers, and with the boom in pet ownership and quality of pet care, um, we're just at a very critical level of not being able to sustain the pet ownership in the US, and really it's become a worldwide issue. Like I was telling you, I get these like random emails from other countries that are like, please, New Zealand, like emailing us like constantly, please come work for 6 months, a year, like take a contract and help us. And
And the thing you're saying with the schools, I did mention like it's kind of the same amount of students you're taking in for students in dental school, like it's 80 to 100, right?
Mhm.
And So in that kind of statistic, it's basically stating that it's harder to get into vet school than it is in dental school or med school. And then on top of that, once you get in there, you're getting the same debt and you're dealing with the same issues, and then you're graduating with the, you know, with the amount of stress and debt that we do, except you're getting, less respect, you're dealing with more issues and more stress overall.
Mhm.
So it is definitely a concern to think like, what is making people want to go to vet school? Like how
Yeah.
is it affect do you feel like it's affecting people right now wanting to apply for vet school, knowing all this
Oh,
stuff?
yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely is, especially the debt that people are taking on and then not being able to come out
Yeah.
and pay that off is a huge portion of it. I think, like I said earlier at dinner, I think the last time I looked, which was within the last year, I believe the national average starting salary for a vet is still around 80 to 85,000. When I graduated 5 years ago, um, the starting national average salary was 65 to 70,000,
Wow.
but we're graduating with the same amount of debt as a medical student who is then going on to earn quadruple their
Yeah.
salary, if not more.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's definitely a deterrent for people. I think the other thing that's a huge deterrent is, unfortunately, the veterinary community has an extremely high rate of suicide. And I have had students on many occasions ask me if it's worth it to go into it, and if I think that it's sustainable or if it's ever joy filled. And it's a very real thing that I have to be honest with students that we lose colleagues constantly
Yeah.
to suicide, and it's devastating. And it's a reality of our field. And I know it's a reality in many medical fields and many groups of people in general. But when those numbers are vast, it's scary, and I think it's scaring people off.
Yeah, I think vet and veterinary medicine in general is one of those professions you really have to love what you do. And I truly think every vet I've met genuinely loves animals. Like it's not like medicine or even dental school. Like some of us get into it because of like, the esteem or the money and all this other stuff. And obviously you've proven that that's not what you get out of it. So it's really the love that you get into it. And that's what's really sad, is that it's leading to depression, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
That's really not great. So I guess for anybody listening, that's considering it or thinking about it, do you have any like advice to give them or any kinds of perspectives to share that you shared with those students at the time? Like anything that kind of helped them get through these?
Yeah, I think the important thing is to know yourself and to know, this sounds cold, but know what you're getting into and understand that you need to be proactive about your mental health from the get go.
Yeah.
If you are going to make the decision, especially if your mental health is something that you struggle with before entering this field or entering vet school, um, I think you need to be prepared, and I think you need to be proactive about making sure that you are supported, that you are in therapy, but truly that you have that support system, that when you get to a place where you might be struggling, because I think I would be lying if I said we don't all experience that at some point, either in school or definitely after school. Um, you have to make sure that you have support systems in place prior to that and not be reaching for those things when you get there.
Yeah.
And have those kind of safeguards set up, knowing that at some point you're going to come to a day or a time or a season in your life where, um, you do question why you did this.
Yeah. Well, I think that's definitely one reason why I wanted to have Stevie on, is because I've known her long enough now to see the ups and downs of her career and like the effects it's had on her. And I've really valued not only her but the relationship we've shared, because we've both spoken about mental health and the importance of it. And that's the reason why Stevie and I really connected, was when I was going through a really dark place. She was also at the time going through something pretty dark with her career and like the trajectory of it. And I think we all go through that in our I was telling her, like, in healthcare, we graduate thinking we're going into this perfect career path that's just gonna like align everything perfectly, and then you get into it and you realize there's still so many challenges along the way. And I think she was early in her career figuring that out too. And that's how we connected. We just kind of like talked about that stuff, and we literally were like crying on FaceTime, talking to each other about stuff. And I really appreciated just her opening up to me and being honest about that stuff. And she's always been that way. She's always been very vulnerable and transparent about things, and never has shied away from the fact that, like, her profession is not perfect and there's a lot of things to work on and improve on. And with that being said, she's still trying to inspire people about that medicine and educate people about it. And she's never kind of like put down the profession itself. And I don't know, she just like genuinely loves what she does and loves helping animals and taking care of people and their pets. So that's something I've really like loved about her. Um, but yeah, with that all stuff aside, I did want to bring up just your layered background with the traveling, because obviously you obviously chose this profession to travel this way because you do love that aspect of it, and you come from a very interesting background. Obviously your significant other is from South Africa, which I connected with because a lot of my family is from South Africa. So if you don't mind talking more about him and
Yes,
your guys'
my better half.
relationship. Yes.
Now he's gonna have to watch it.
Yeah. He has to listen to this.
Yeah, so Brendan or Bren is definitely my better half. Like when people say, "Oh my God, you're so nice," I'm like, I'm not. But if you met my husband, like you would love him. If you like me, you would love him.
I have to agree with that.
Yeah,
I love him very much. And
yeah. He's great. He is South African,
yeah,
born and raised, and he came over to the States to play rugby in college. He saw me on campus and thought it was the greatest thing ever.
obviously.
Obviously, no. But sort of. And then yeah, we started dating. Like I told Hamza at dinner tonight. He was my and is my first and only boyfriend, which is horrifying to like 16-year-old Stevie. But we've been together now for, oh my gosh, like I think we've been together for 13 years and we've been married for 8. Um,
That's
So I always tell people, I mean, because clearly I'm still only 25, so I was obviously,
obviously.
you know, very young when I got married. He
No,
doesn't like that joke so much.
I told Stevie, I was like, having just one boyfriend your entire life is not such a bad thing, or like
Yeah.
to just have one relationship. Because coming from this side of having to still continue to date and try to find that person, I was telling her she's not missing out on anything at all. And if anything, I wish life had gone that way. If she's ever wondering about like, oh, I wonder what it's like, in the dating world, I'm like, do not wonder about it. It's awful.
Yeah.
It's just a nightmare out here. But
I'm glad I
um,
locked it down when I did.
yeah, no, I think that's another important thing that I see in your growth is just having a stable, healthy relationship. Obviously, I know it's not perfect, but I feel like it's a good template to look at from an outside perspective, because I can see the support he gives you and the
Yeah,
patience he's provided to you. Because I mean, I'm sure that you're not easy to handle during those stressful times.
definitely not.
And I've felt that with dentistry too. But like, yeah, to have somebody who's there to like not only support you in it, but like be able to tolerate you during those times is
Absolutely.
must be an incredible like just
Yes.
thing to have.
I definitely would not be able to do what I do right now without
Yeah.
him. I mean,
Yeah. I
genuinely.
mean, even this travel thing, like I'm
Yeah.
sure you have to have a very secure relationship
Yes.
to hold this, because it can be a lot of strain on both people
Yeah.
being so far apart for a long time. So
Absolutely.
for advice for people listening to this who deal with long distance relationships, what would you say?
Oh, I know. You really have to be. I think my biggest thing is knowing your own relationship. And thankfully, like I've already alluded to, I'm married to probably the best man in the entire world. And we've definitely had our ups and downs and all sorts of things, but he is very just secure and wonderful and supports everything I do. He's my biggest cheerleader. Sometimes too much, where I'm like, but I don't want to. And
Yeah,
he's like, you can do it.
that's awesome.
And I think the biggest thing is just knowing your relationship. Not every, this situation would not work for everyone. Um, and you really have to trust each other and be secure in what you know and who you are. Um, I think for us, the nice thing is right now we're both able to sort of live our dreams together, and have that flexibility and freedom to be experiencing really cool things in our career. So, for those of you that don't know Bren, he is a double board certified physical therapist in sports and orthopedic medicine, which is really badass. And he does not brag on himself enough. And he's a clinical professor now. And so he is able to teach and work with the sports teams and do all sorts of things on the university level, and take care of our two wonderful fur children, while I get to go off and do the travel thing. And I, again, would not be able to do it without him. Um, but it's not for everyone. And I think you really have to know yourself and know your relationship before embarking on that. And lots of communication, lots of texts and calls and FaceTimes. And um, you just have to have somebody that wants to see you succeed in every aspect of life. And I think, regardless of if it's travel or not, like you should not settle for someone that doesn't want you to have everything in life and have the best of the whole world.
I mean, I don't want to make this a relationship podcast, but I do want to, like, I think just from like interacting with y'all and being able to like talk to both of you guys from either end, like, I do think it's a beautiful relationship. And I did want to ask, like, when you guys have, or if you have faced any challenges, what do you feel like has been the biggest challenge of your relationship together? Because from my perspective, it looks great. But not only what was that challenge, but how did you guys get over that big challenge? And did it help bring you guys closer together? Or was there something that kind of, I guess, strengthened this bond between you guys? Because I'm sure it had to be something rocky, especially with the profession you're in.
I think definitely hands down, our communication styles are very different.
Okay.
And that's something that we still deal with. Like I don't think it'll be ever anything that's fully resolved, um, because we're humans and you're always going to have little things. For Bren, he is a talker and a communicator, which, if you know us, does not seem like that he would be the one that wants to talk everything out. But he is like, wants to talk until there's a solution. Versus for me, I need time. If something is brought to me, like I want to ruminate,
Process it.
process it, and not just rehash it over and over. And so that has been probably consistently our biggest struggle in the
Okay.
relationship is communication styles. And I think we're always learning new things in different phases of life, bring different challenges. And so understanding, we had a conversation literally, I think a week ago of like, if an issue comes up, like remembering each other's communication styles and taking that into account, but then also taking the other person's into account.
Right.
Like, you know, it can't always be that we ruminate on something. There have to be times where we talk it out, and that might be an uncomfortable situation for me, but I know that's what he needs.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's a constant thing that we'll
Okay.
experience.
Well, take notes, people.
Yes.
I'll definitely be taking that for myself.
Communication is key in
Yeah.
every aspect of life. But
Yeah. Well, then, I guess I did want to bring a couple of questions I had back to veterinary medicine, which I don't personally have a pet. I've always wanted a dog, but I feel like with your profession being a very specific thing that not everybody gets to meet a vet in their life, I do think it's such an important profession to know about and to understand the amount of work and effort that goes into it to have a higher respect for the profession because of that. So, is there anything that you feel like you wanted to address in terms of, like, I think we talked about this together. So, one thing Stevie and I mentioned was between dentists and vets, I think there's a little bit of like a overlook in respect with
patients sometimes like, they'll show up late or they'll talk down to the dentist or they'll question our diagnoses, which is funny because, like we think about how a lot of times these same patients will go to a heart surgeon and the heart surgeon will be like, yeah, you need this and it's like going to be $20,000 or something and like they won't question it. But like in our case, it's like I there's this little lack of like trust with that. And I was curious, like, is there anything else that you come across that you wish the outside world could know more about and the amount of, I guess, if there's like any overlooked myths or anything like that with veterinary medicine?
Yeah, I think the biggest one that comes to mind is that vets are in it for the money somehow.
Yeah.
And I mean, you already touched on like truly every vet, which I know a lot of vets, and every single one genuinely that I've come across um, is in it for good reason. And they're in it because of the love of medicine and the love of their patients. And I think understanding that while medicine is expensive, and that's across the board, human or pet, we're not doing this because we think we're going to get rich. We're not trying to run tests because it's going to put that money in our pocket. We're genuinely doing what we believe is best for your pet. And every time I recommend something, it's because I would do it in my own. And the vets that I know are the exact same way. And so understanding that, we're not just trying to necessarily pay a bigger mortgage by doing x-rays or doing these things. We're trying to do what's right for you and for your pet.
Yeah.
If I could give every new pet owner a piece of advice, just get pet insurance or set up a savings account or something, because again, medicine is expensive. And being on the ER side, I see every worst case scenario, even I could never imagine. There's still new fears unlocked every single day of my own pets when I see things come in that I could not fathom happening. And so just be prepared, whatever that looks like. Know going into it that at some point something's going to happen, and to be prepared for that.
Okay. The pet insurance thing is definitely good advice. I think that's something that I'm sure some pet owners think is a scam, but then when you
Yeah.
think about the commonality of
Mhm.
these, random emergencies or things you don't expect, it adds up over time.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you feel like you come across a lot as a vet that you wish the community knew more about, especially pet owners, like things that they overlook in terms of their dogs or cats or anything, just to educate the public?
I think
I'm sure there's a whole category of
I
stuff that
know.
doesn't
I'm
really
like, which one
sorry
should
to
I
put you on
pick?
the thing, but yeah.
I think just because I had this conversation actually with a friend last night, um, preventative healthcare is going to lengthen your pet's life. It's going to keep them healthier and prevent a lot of disease. And by that, what I mean is your yearly checkups, your yearly blood works, dental cleanings. Oh my God, get your dogs and cats' teeth cleaned. Obviously, I'm speaking to a dentist, so the longevity associated with a clean mouth, and
Yeah,
it goes for dogs and cats as well.
definitely.
And if you can keep their teeth clean, you can prevent heart disease, you can prevent arthritis, liver disease, kidney disease. Like there's so many things that if people, it all starts with preventative disease
Yeah.
or preventative healthcare,
Yeah.
and you can prevent a lot of things from happening.
Okay. It's good to know. All right. So another thing we talked about was Stevie's love for reading. I think since this podcast is obviously about passions, veterinary medicine is one of her biggest passions, but I think we've harped on that quite a bit. But the great thing about a lot of doctors is there's a lot of layers to them and things that they do outside of medicine that they really love. And we were talking about the things that we love doing. So, for instance, like I'm really into movies and music, and like I love watching movies. And Stevie, on the other hand, has told me she's not really a fan of just like sitting down and like watching movies, which is hard for me to understand. But her way of kind of escaping reality and kind of connecting, um, like, to her love is reading. And she loves reading so much that she's going to be writing her own books and she wants to write children's books, which I think is fascinating because I can totally see Stevie doing that, but I definitely was surprised to hear it. So, if you'd like to talk further about that,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear it.
I've always loved reading. Like that has always been since I was a kid, my
Any
favorite
genre
pastime.
or just everything?
I mean, I think as any like good millennial, like Harry Potter was probably one of my biggest loves and got very into like the Twilight and
Okay.
kind of fantasy. Now I don't discriminate. I'll read anything. I love, like we were talking about, a good memoir. I love a good life story. But then I love just like great smut.
Yeah, I
Or,
was gonna make
you
a joke
know,
with that, but I was like, okay, she does live with that.
it's 100%.
Okay.
But
I'm
yeah,
honestly surprised at how popular that genre is because I've talked to
so
three
popular.
girls that are into smut, and I'm just like, I didn't even know that still existed because I remember I'd see it in bookstores in like the little corners, and I was like, oh, that's so
Well,
weird.
here's the thing. So, just a very quick side note, the romance book sector has always been the highest sales
Really?
of books, like historically, always.
Yeah.
Um, but, you know,
It
it's
was a
like
taboo
it's a
subject.
taboo subject.
Okay.
It's a woman's interest
Yeah.
that women don't have interest. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
so interesting.
I think it's one of those things that's becoming more normalized to talk about is like the same as like girl dinner. We're just shedding light on things that like women have always enjoyed and always
What's girl dinner?
loved. You don't know what a girl dinner is?
No, am I missing out?
You're missing out big time. So girl dinner is basically how the majority of girls, women,
This
have
is a sex positive podcast, so we
very,
okay.
but we're reclaiming the term girl.
Okay.
And basically it's the way that girls will eat random crap for dinner where it's like deconstructed charcuterie kind of. So think like a pickle, 5 chips, maybe a couple like bagel bites, like we just kind of graze. Like
Okay.
if a girl is left to her own devices, she's not gonna have a meal. Like she's gonna
Okay.
have girl dinner.
Gotcha.
So for instance, before I got married, my girl dinner was a bowl of popcorn and coffee or wine. And that's what I sustained on through all of vet school
No
until I
way.
got married.
Oh,
So
okay. This is interesting.
yes. Anyways, I digress.
Okay. I'm
Um,
sure a lot of guys just learned something new on this podcast. So good.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
And now you'll understand why when you ask us like what you want for dinner, like
Yeah.
to us, I'm like, I want pepperoni, a cheese stick,
Yeah.
and like 3 Cheez-Its.
So
Like,
this is not only a thing when you're pregnant, it's like
no, no,
when you're
yeah,
pregnant it's just hyperactive.
exactly.
Okay.
Yes. It's just an exaggerated form of
Gotcha.
what we already eat.
Okay.
So that's girl dinner. You
Okay.
should try it. It's
Cool.
delicious.
We'll try it.
What were we
Back,
talking
we're
about?
talking about smut.
We were talking about smut.
Okay.
So yes, love that, love fantasy, love anything.
We're gonna go from
Uh,
smut to children's
yes,
books. That'll be a good
exactly. Good
transition.
segue.
Perfect.
And so I've always loved writing as well. It's always been sort of a creative outlet.
Yeah.
I got out of it definitely through vet school. And then during, I think the pandemic is when I sort of reignited my love of reading and just that sort of section of my brain that had gone unused for several years. And so now, after reigniting that love, I decided to start writing my own children's books based on, we have 4 wonderful nieces and their adventures with our dogs, because they're the greatest dogs on the planet. And their little adventures and their mishaps. And so that's kind
So
of what
you're
we're
gonna
here up
have
to.
Draco in there and everything?
Draco's going to be a star.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
You
it's
don't
gonna
want
be
people to
great.
get confused with Harry Potter though.
That's true.
There's only like one Draco.
There's only one Draco.
But now you're
They
gonna
look very
replace-
different.
Yeah.
I don't think there will be
Okay,
confusion.
that's
Mhm.
good to know. So have you started a couple of books? How many have you started
Yes.
so far?
I think I have 3 basically written.
Are they like
more
rhyming
ideas.
books or how is the
Sort of.
the-
Yeah. Yeah.
how-
There's like a cadence to
Okay,
them of
okay.
sort of fun little rhymes and wordplay. And
cool. And then do you have like art on it? Or
no art yet. So that's going to be sort of the next step is
Gotcha.
like editing and artwork. I am not super artistic,
Yeah.
so I'm going to find someone that would
Brett
like
Sutton,
to
artistic.
participate. Not in that kind of art.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would have been a
He's
cute-
creative,
Yeah.
but Yeah.
Would have been a cute little couple.
I know.
But
Get on it, Bren. Start
yeah.
taking some
All right, when
drawing.
you guys do the smut section, that's
Yeah.
when we can start working together on that.
Perfect. Yes.
But yeah, that's really cool. I think that's like a very interesting way to like kind of carry your passions into something, because that's always something I thought about. Like if I ever did another profession, I always thought I'd love to be a cinematographer or something. And like
Yeah.
it's not as easy, obviously. You have to like kind of go through the whole thing. But yeah, I think like that's the beauty of Instagram to me, is you can carry a lot of your creativity to that realm. Um, so that's how I've kind of presented it. But yeah, if you're somebody who loves reading, there's not a lot of mediums to transfer it over to, but that is one like pretty interesting way to do it. And yeah, I'm excited to see how these books come out. It'll
Me
be
too.
pretty cool. Do you think you'd do anything like related to like vet medicine or anything for kids? I feel like
I
that'd be
think
kind of cool.
so.
Just like
Absolutely. Yeah.
educate the kids on how to get into it and whatnot.
Yes, definitely. Spark the next generation.
Yeah. Maybe also warn them how stressful it is. I
Yeah.
don't know if that'd be good to warn kids at that age.
I don't know. Someone should have probably warned me.
Yeah. So the one thing my listeners are always asking is also about figs. And, like since I have had a lot of friends on here that have been ambassadors, they are always curious about how you got involved with figs and how your relationship has been, and like, just what you've gotten out of that relationship. And, I've talked about mine quite a bit, like just through social media, but I guess I never did ask you about that. So that'd be an
Yeah.
interesting thing to hear about.
It was so long ago. For a second, I had to think
Yeah.
about like
She's
how
an
did that
OG guy. She's
happen?
been with
Yeah,
figs for a while.
it's been years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was shortly after I got out of school and I had just been wearing like the school branded, I won't say the brand,
Yeah.
scrubs, and they were not cute. They were just big, boxy, scratchy. And when I graduated, I wanted to up my scrub game, and I had heard about these figs and they looked cool and the ads looked great. And a couple people told me the hype was worth it. And so I ordered a couple of pairs and I instantly fell in love with them. And at that time, I was just sort of venturing into the social media sphere and posting photos, mostly of like cute puppies that I would see at work. And I always wore my figs. Like it just very quickly became an obsession.
Yeah.
And I would just tag them in my Instagram photos. And eventually, again, it was sort of at the beginning of sort of the ambassador train. And so they had reached out when they were going to do their first Wild Aid campaign, which is an organization that does conservation worldwide. It's an amazing organization that they partner with a lot. And they reached out and they said, we would love to do this veterinary specific collaboration. Can we send you, I think it was like compression socks. And can we send you some compression socks, post a photo and tag us? And that's what I did. And
Was
very
this during
shortly,
COVID? Sorry to interrupt.
no, it was
Before COVID.
2018, I
Okay.
think. It was a while. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Okay.
And
Because I remember the Wild Aid they did during COVID, so I didn't. Yeah,
yeah,
they did a lot.
yeah. I think it was the first Wild Aid campaign that they did,
Okay.
if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong, but so it was before COVID. We did that, and then shortly after, I had a call with Allison. Shout out Allison, and she asked if I wanted to join the Figs family. And I said, hell yeah. And then I've been with them ever since. I just adore what they do for the healthcare professions and veterinarians. And their team is always open and willing to hear feedback and try and understand what veterinarians go through and how to best support us. And
Yeah.
they've done so much. I mean, they've brought you to me. They've brought so many people.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Felt like it.
Fortunately.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think when I first met Stevie, I don't know how. Do you remember when we first met? I don't even recall.
No,
It was probably like just some random, like stupid DM I sent about a joke or something. But
probably.
I just feel like it was like an instant connection.
Mhm.
I didn't feel like there was any airs of like fakeness or anything. It was just like a genuine friendship. And then I also just felt like I could literally ask her or talk about anything and not feel like, I don't know, like judged or anything. Like even like the dumb, like, animal questions I always have for her. And like I told her when I get a dog, she's going to be like just completely, her phone's gonna be blowing up with dumb questions from me. But I've just never felt like I'm ever an inconvenience for Stevie. She's always felt so welcoming. And I've always loved that about her. And you might not know now, she's wearing figs to represent figs because of her work and everything she's going through. But
I did also work today.
yeah,
Like I
she's
came from
she
work.
straight up came straight from work, went to dinner with me, and now doing this. And then she has to go to work tomorrow. So shout out to Stevie for being a hard worker for that. But she's also a fashionista. She dresses really well. But her one thing is she loves wearing all black, and that's something I really like love about her because she's like, I love when people have a certain style or like something that they really just take as their own and like just take full like ownership of it and have no fear of it. And that's Stevie with all black. And she's a big, if you see any of her clothes where she's like dressed for an event, she's always wearing black. And I love that about her. And I brought her black clothes. I wore a black t-shirt in her
In
honor
my honor.
today. But yeah, that's another thing I wanted to talk about is what's your attachment to this blackness?
I don't know.
Yeah, did it start
It's
at any point or are you always like that?
I have not always been like that. Like I think it developed slowly. Um,
You kind of like inspired me because I've tried something. I was like, damn, all black looks dope. Like I should
it
wear more
looks
all black.
dope.
Yeah.
Like it really, and I think that's all it was like,
And it's like timeless. Like you
yeah,
can always wear it.
it's just the evolution of like it always looks good in photos. You can't tell how expensive a piece is when it's black
True.
because it all looks good.
Yeah.
When you only wear black, everything goes together. So it's just easy.
Yeah.
And
And it gives you
yeah,
this like kind of dominance. Like when you
it
see them,
does.
it's like you like that person knows what they're talking about.
It's
Like,
badass.
yeah,
I
I
mean,
agree.
yeah, I
Yeah, every
agree.
time I see Stevie, and she's usually wearing leather and it's
Yeah.
all black, and I'm like,
So maybe that's where the dominance comes from.
yeah, maybe
The leather adds
the
a little
smut,
sprinkle.
a little smut
Yeah.
influence in there. But yeah, no, I think that's really cool, and I was always curious about like what kind of got you into that because it's a very specific style to have, but I love it. And whenever I think of you, I think of all black.
Well, I've done it well then.
Yeah, every
That's
time
the
I hang out
goal.
with her, I'm always like, Stevie, I wore black. She's
And here
like,
I showed up in gray. So
yeah,
I
no,
blame work.
I
They
was
have a
so
dress
disappointed.
code.
I go, you've changed.
I've changed.
This travel life's changed you. Yeah.
Next time.
I even wore alligator boots for her, but then I wore them and I was like, maybe I shouldn't wear a boot made out of an animal if I'm talking to a vet med doctor.
Yeah.
But you know,
Probably gonna get canceled. All the
I
vets and the
yeah, I organically skinned it and it was at its end of days, so
yeah.
it was all done with respect.
We're all about ending suffering.
Yeah, and being resourceful, right?
Yeah,
Perfect.
absolutely.
Okay. And then yeah, I usually like to end these podcasts. I think we've hit a good amount of subjects. We've covered quite a bit from smut to vet med to all the stuff.
Children's book.
Just to end it on, what I like to do is see if my guests have any like personal questions about me or anything that you've wanted to ask me that we can dive into, either about our relationship or just in general.
Okay. I want to know where you want to be in 5 years.
Oh man,
If you could plan your ultimate life, what would that look like?
that's a good question. I definitely want to do more than dentistry. I feel like I love, and we talked about this at dinner too. We both really love our profession, and I'm very thankful to be in a profession where I can help people. But there's been something inside of me for like the last year or two now that feels like there's more inside of me and there's more I'm capable of. And I'm sure you feel the same with this book and everything too. But I just want to be in a place where I can be doing something additionally to dentistry instead of just considering dentistry my like final chapter of my career. I think I've been surrounded by so many amazing people and like inspiring people in my life that like I almost intentionally throw myself in the pits with these people because it gives me this little bit of anxiety in a good way that like I need to do more, or I need to try more, and not in an unhealthy way of like comparison syndrome and like going through that unhealthy route, but more so like, wow, this person has accomplished so more, and it showed me that I'm capable of that. Like, this person put in the work to get to this way, and like I need to remember that like in order to get to that level, I need to put in that little bit of extra work. So with that being said, like within 5 years, I would really like to be doing something, for instance, like starting a company or doing something to add another kind of ripple in the capacity of whether it's dentistry or technology or something else. And this podcast was like kind of like a little testing thing for me. It's kind of one of those things. It's like, I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to try this. And then I did it and I'm like, oh, okay, well, like I could do this. And I like was able to like create something like this. So the next thing I want to try, it's just like you just have to realize it takes like a couple of steps and it takes a little bit of effort and it takes like amazing friends like Xy to like help and do this kind of stuff. But everything's possible, especially like we live in a country like America where you can do literally anything. So sorry, that's like a long-winded answer, but
No, I
yeah,
love
I
it.
think it's
It's
like it's
awesome.
really cool that like I get to hang out with people like you that have accomplished so much, like whether it's digitally, so through social media, but also just with what you're doing with vet medicine and the people that you inspire along the way, um, including people like me. You've inspired me in like a lot of ways just to like, you know, put my best foot forward and just maintain that humility that you do. Like the Stevie I know now compared to the Stevie I've known 3 years ago, that it's the same person. Like you haven't changed your personality, which I think is beautiful, but you still have like you have a fire inside you, which is like even stronger now, but it's more directed in a positive capacity. So I think
Thank
that's great. So yeah, thanks for the question.
you. Yeah.
Sorry I didn't want to make it about me, but
It is your
this is my
podcast. I feel like
podcast.
you
Yeah.
get one question.
Yeah. And yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this with me. I think you're, like I said, a beautiful person externally and internally. And I think you have such a great positive impact on your followers. And,
Thank you.
I wanted you on this podcast, like not for the clout, not for anything, but just because, there are certain people I really want to have on this podcast. And you were definitely in the top list of that. And I'm just glad that you're able to take the time to do this with me.
Anytime. Anytime. Anything for you.
Good. Thank you, Stevie. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
I love you. And guys, I'll leave Stevie's Instagram and all of her personal stuff on there. And if you guys want to reach out to her, if you have any questions or any future vet students or anything want to reach out to her, she's a great resource to have. Please follow her. And yeah, this is Stevie and this is Hamza. Thanks for listening. And if you have any parting words for your listeners, no?
Stay cool, pony boy.
Okay, cool. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon. Take care. Bye.